Guys, welcome back to the show. I'm not going to lie to you. There's things in life that are not that exciting to talk about, and your closing costs, that's one of them. It's just one of them, everybody. And there's no way around this. This is boring subject matter. If you're watching this video, it's because you either have to learn this because you're about to buy a house, or you're so bored that this is just how you consume your time, in which case, I don't know. I don't know if I'm excited or disappointed for you. So let's talk about closing costs. It's an often forgotten part of the home buying experience because for most people, I think, okay, I'll buy a house. The cash that I need to have available is for my down payment. You know, whatever, 5, 10, 3%, 20%, whatever it is for you and your circumstances, right? And that's true. You may or may not, if you're doing a VA loan or something like that, first-time home buyer programs, may not have a down payment. You're definitely going to have closing costs. And you need to think about this because the thing is, closing costs is cash out of pocket. You don't finance closing costs like you do with some things, right? Like you pay your closing costs. You can, right? And we'll do this on a different week. But in terms of should you ask the sellers to pay for your closing costs, let's say that for a separate week, shall we? For right now, let's just assume you're responsible for paying your own closing costs because chances are you're going to be. How much are they? There's no fixed rule here, but as a general rule of thumb, let's say plan on about 3%. So on a, $300,000 house, that would be $9,000. In my opinion, just based on what I see from the deals that we do, $9,000 would be pretty high on your closing costs for a $300,000 house. Unless you're buying down interest points or something like that, we'll get into that momentarily. But this is cash out of pocket, right? So if you said, just hypothetically, my down payment is $30,000, cool. That's $9,000 extra, so we need $39,000 cash to close because we need your down payment plus your closing costs, and likely your inspection on top of that. Factor in, maybe $500 for that. Okay, so that's kind of the stuff that you need to factor in terms of how much cash to have on hand. Early in the mortgage application process, you are going to get a loan estimate. I think it's within like 3 days of submitting your mortgage application. Don't quote me on that. I think it's right, but I'm not a lender, right? So I'm going from memory on that. It's going to be a breakdown that's just an estimate of what your closing costs would be based on the purchase price of the homes that you're considering. It's an estimate. Things change, interest rates change, which is going to change your closing costs, but it is an estimate. And then you're going to shop, you're going to get under contract on a house, and then you're going to be almost ready to close on the house. And 3 days prior to closing on the house, you're going to get sent your closing disclosure. Your lender will probably go through this with you. They should, at the very least. I don't think they are required to, but they should if they're decent at their job. And that's going to outline all your final numbers. So it's going to say, hey, look, here's everything that's in your closing costs. Here's your debits, your credits. It's frankly a pretty confusing sheet. It's one of those things that when you sit at the closing table across from the title officer and he's like, all right, let's go through your closing disclosure, you're going to nod and you're going to sign it and you're not really going to understand it, but it's just kind of how it works, right? But we don't want to look dumb at the closing table. So he's going to be like, any questions on that? You're going to be like, nope, got it. You don't. You don't got it. You don't know what all that shit is, but you're just signing and hoping for the best that you're not getting screwed, which you're not. But, it's just food for thought, everyone. We're not all geniuses, or at least I'm not. So what is in the closing costs? I'm just going to give you some common things. There can be a lot of different things. I'm just going to give you some common things as examples because you go, man, if these things are, let's just say $9,000, right? It's $9,000. Like, what the hell costs $9,000 in closing costs, right? It's not my down payment. Like, what the hell just cost me $9,000? First of all, it's going to vary for buyers and sellers. But I'm just going to kind of give you some examples that might be for buyers and or sellers just to give you a sense for it. So there's going to be a title fee from the title company. That's just for them processing your deal and doing their research and doing that meeting with you and transferring funds and all that kind of stuff. Usually that's pretty low. That's not like $5,000 of the $9,000 or something like that. But hey, they've got to make their fee as well. Otherwise they're not in business. So that's their fee to process your deal. You're going to have stuff like prepaid homeowners insurance. I think it's pretty typical that you just pay a year up front. So hey, whatever your homeowners premium is for the year, let's just say it's $1,000. Cool, $1,000. that you pay up front winds up going into an escrow account, right? Loan origination fees. Someone other than me can explain that. I'm not a lender and I keep a peripheral understanding of the lending and the title stuff, but it's like, look, that's not my job. They're the expert on that. But you are going to have a loan origination fee. Ask your lender about that. But it is standard stuff. Title insurance policy, you're going to have stuff like prepaid interest. So basically, interest is going to accrue on your mortgage between when you close and when your first mortgage payment is due. For those of you that have not bought a house before, you pay your mortgage in arrears, which means after the fact. So on March 1, you pay your rent in a lease for the month of March. If you buy a house, your March payment is due on April 1. So you actually pay your March payment after you lived in the house all of March. So you pay it on April 1. So typically you will move into a house and you're going to have anywhere from a month to upwards of 2 months where you don't make a mortgage payment. But you do have interest that accrues during that time. So you're going to basically be prepaying that interest for that gap in your closing costs. Okay? Hopefully that made some degree of sense. Oftentimes your appraisal will be in there. It's $500 or $600. Sometimes you'll pay that just out of pocket when they actually do the appraisal. I'd say most of the times it's going to wind up in your closing costs. Prorated property taxes. So there's going to be property taxes. We're not going to get all into that, but you're going to pay a portion of your property taxes within your closing costs. And then what's going to happen, just so you guys have a framework of it, your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance are going to wind up in an escrow account. So you're going to make a payment. When you look at your mortgage payment every month, let's just say it's $2,000. You go, okay, of that $2,000, this month, this much is for interest, this on the loan, this month, this much. You guys would be amazed how many takes I've had to do with these videos today. I just can't fucking talk for some reason. But here's your interest portion. Here's your principal portion, the portion that is actually paying down your mortgage payment. And then this is your taxes and insurance. That is going into an escrow account. Your mortgage service provider just puts that into an account marked Jake. And at the end of the year, when your insurance and your taxes are due, they pay it. Your service provider just pays it for you. So you've been paying it every month. It just went into an account, and then someone else pays it for you on your behalf when it's due. That's kind of how that works. Commissions, if you're a seller, you'll wind up paying commissions within your closing costs. So that would be for sure the biggest sort of line item inside of your closing costs if you were a home seller. If there are any discount points, so this is basically a prepayment to get your interest rate down. So if you said right now, hey, I'm at the national average, I'm at like 4%, let's call it, and I really want to get my interest rate down to 3%, cool. You can, don't quote me on this, but most of the times you can do that. You can basically fork over cash in order to get your interest rate down to that 3% where you wanted it. So if you go, hey, I want my monthly payment to really be lower, cool, buy down your interest rate. Pretty common, actually, just so you guys know. That's actually a pretty common one. And then just one other example, you might have an HOA transfer fee. Sometimes that's paid by the buyer, sometimes it's paid by the seller, sometimes that was sort of a little negotiation point that might have been in the contract, but usually it's not too much. We're talking in the neighborhood of maybe $500 to transfer the property from the sellers to the buyers within the HOA, right? If it's a townhouse condo or just a residential neighborhood with houses that has an HOA. So those are just some examples. A lot of other stuff that can be in there, but those are some examples for you. On the alcohol front, so nothing particularly new. Well, kind of new. So Fucano, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that. I'm not Japanese, if you couldn't tell, so I might be screwing that up. But this is a Japanese whiskey. Whiskey, of course, being all-encompassing. Bourbon, for those of you that you don't know, is specific to America. 51% corn, and the mash bill has to be in like new oak charred barrels, like aged for 2 years. So there's a difference between all bourbon is whiskey, everyone, but not all whiskey is bourbon. It's the easiest way that you can think about it. So this Japanese stuff here, not bourbon, this is whiskey, right? Totally different animal. And I recently realized that I'd had my previous bottle of Fucano, the 2020 edition, open for probably a solid year or so, and it's been sitting at about 50% empty for probably 6 months that I hadn't touched it, which is really kind of just a recipe for you're going to change the impact of the bourbon. It's not that it's bad, but that quantity of air that's in the bottle is going to start to kind of mellow out your bourbon a little bit. So I plowed through half a bottle of that Fucano in about the past week and a half, and damn it, God, it's so good. It's so good, everyone, that as soon as that bottle was gone, I went out and I bought the edition 2021. I'm going to assume this is pretty much identical in flavor and everything to the 2020, but damn, man. If you guys have not had this, and if you like Japanese whiskey, this is really a great one to pick up. They're about a $80 bottle, so not cheap, but not like expensive, not like a celebration bottle, but definitely in that, like, you're not going to drink that every night. That's too expensive for a daily drinker kind of thing. But damn, truly one of my favorite whiskeys that I'd kind of forgotten how good this shit was until I plowed through half a bottle of it over the past week or so. So check this out. If it's in your shops, highly recommend for me. Beyond that, if you guys need real estate help, let us know. This channel is basically just a selfish channel for me to get to talk to you about alcohol and maybe give you a pointer or two here and there on real estate. But if you guys need real estate help, let me know. I'm based in Utah. My business, the 1911 Syndicate, we help a lot of clients all over the place. Probably more clients out of state than we do in Utah, to be honest with you. But if you're in Utah, we'll be helping you, and you might even lay eyes on this stupid-ass dog that's down here, who's been kind of a shithead today. So I hope you guys are doing good. Take care. We'll see you next time.